Thank you all for coming. It's great to be out here. Sorry we're a little bit late. We ran into a lot more traffic than we were expecting. My name's Steve Christiaens, and this is Jake Miller. We're both from Bishop Fox, and we've been, we're in the Atlanta office, and Bishop Fox is a security consulting firm. We work with Fortune 1000 companies and help them to improve their security by hacking into their websites.
And today we're going to talk about smart devices and Internet of Things. So
here's just a quick outline of the agenda, and we'll hop right into it. So first, we're going to talk about just a really quick primer. What is the Internet of Things? I'm sure a lot of you are pretty familiar with what we're talking about, but we're talking about so-called smart devices, right? So things that have been given internet connectivity so that they can share data, and so that you can get access to that data in ideal circumstances. But as we see here, we see a typical, or actually an atypical right now, but maybe in a few years, a typical smart home, right? So we've got security cameras, we have a video doorbell, we have smart light bulbs, even smart window shades, and a connected sprinkler system, and everything you'd be able to control from any connected device, right? And so everything, we're seeing everything start to get connected. Everything has internet access, everything is sharing data. And we start to see that everything that used to be just contained in software, we're starting to see a lot of those things in real life.
in hardware solutions.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. So yeah, we see in the kitchen, smart fridges, smart your shopping list, smart watches, monitoring all your health data. We see that guy, right? Monitoring his heart rate, monitoring his blood pressure, how often he sleeps, how often he goes running, and how often he's exercising. And these are kind of things that we're seeing proliferate, right? Just everything is starting to be connected in this world today.
Except for the security. So first we're going to be looking at the new wireless. So with these new technologies comes new ways of communicating. In terms of wireless protocols, these are some of the most common ones we're seeing. We're seeing BTLE. We're seeing ZigBee. We're seeing Z-Wave. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit.
Yeah. So these we really want to go over. We're talking about these really high level, really quick, and we really want to help you understand if you want to look into hacking smart devices or learn more about them. What are some of the things that you should be looking into, right? What are some of the technologies that you need to be familiar with? And if anyone has any questions as we go along, feel free to just raise your hand, yell it out. We're happy to field questions as we go. So we had Bluetooth. So we've got Bluetooth Classic, Bluetooth Low Energy, ZigBee, Z-Wave is not on there, and Wi-Fi. These are kind of right now the wireless standards that you're going to run into if you're looking at just a regular smart home system with just a couple of light bulbs. You'll see all of these things. So Bluetooth, a lot of you are probably familiar with, at least on some level. Bluetooth has it's short range. It's usually 30 to 50 feet. It's built into tons of things nowadays, and it's just device-to-device networking. When we start talking about ZigBee and Z-Wave, those things are using mesh networking. So one device will be talking to the router, and it'll also be talking to another device, and it might be talking to 3 other devices. And so with Bluetooth, they've got the range issue of 30 feet, and so maybe your Bluetooth device on one end of your house won't be able to talk to a Bluetooth device on another. But with mesh networking, that's one of the ways these smart devices get around that is if my if my light bulb or my controller on one end of the house wants to talk to, the light bulb in my kid's room downstairs, it can route its traffic through the mesh network by talking to other light bulbs on the network and having them relay that message.
And another note on this, these are also really important to understand when looking at the attack surface of these devices, because you're not only looking at a physical product with hardware and firmware, you're also looking at the ways it's communicating wirelessly. And so we've seen on multiple devices, we've seen vulnerabilities associated across these protocols, and that's one of the main attack vectors.
So I guess any questions up to this point?
The Bluetooth 2.0, is that considered classic or is that different or?
So at least on that slide, it was Bluetooth Classic, and then there's Bluetooth 4.0, which has had some updates already, which is also referred to as BLE or Bluetooth Low Energy. Right. So it's a modified protocol. So some of the encryption that they use between Bluetooth and Bluetooth Low Energy, they've changed that, and they've changed a lot of the protocol. So it's good to be familiar with both, because Bluetooth exploits and Bluetooth weaknesses are different from Bluetooth Low Energy.
Yeah, I was going to actually say on the Bluetooth Low Energy front, you have a pairing. When the pairing process happens, you can actually capture that temporary key by brute forcing it. And when you can do that, you can actually decrypt the communications for the short-term and long-term keys. So if you can capture the pairing process, it's all over. So it's actually interesting. That's one of the flaws with BTLE that's different.
Awesome, thanks.
So yeah, this was kind of what we were talking about before, was just identifying when you're looking at a device where all the different types of entry for user input. Yeah. And so you may have things from different networking protocols. Mouse on the screen. Oh, whoops. So you would see, if we have proxy traffic, look at which domains are being accessed, intercepting with, burp and everything.
Yeah. So this is kind of the process. It's a high-level overview of the process that we'll go through if we're looking at a smart device. So the first thing is, after unpacking it and kind of getting familiar with how it works, right, we'll get more familiar with how it works. So we start to identify all the pieces, right? We look at its networking protocols, how it's connecting, proxy its requests, and start to look at the wireless standards that it's using.
And also a very important part when you're looking at a device and you're looking at exploiting it is trying to figure out what's maximum business impact. So for this product, what's worst case scenario? And the tools we use for probing this are actually pretty neat. For Bluetooth, we use the Ubertooth 1, which is right here, that little dongle over there.
This guy.
So we use that for sniffing wireless Bluetooth traffic, and this is one of the ways we will capture pairing keys on the network. We recently had an assessment, and this is actually kind of funny, a recent assessment, we were getting a lot of noise with our communications, so we actually had to build a small Faraday cage to help to prevent against packet loss. So you'll see as we go through this that sometimes the solutions are not so clear-cut, and you have to develop your own creative solutions to help the products work as best they can. Because a lot of these are small individual hardware packages that may have some functionality problems. Mm-hmm.
I think one thing to note that surprised me as I was first getting into it. So for a lot of these things, ZigBee, Z-Wave, Bluetooth, if you want to get into it and start to look at packets going across the air and kind of do inspection, try to intercept things. At first I was like, well, it looks like I need a bunch of money, right? Or I need to be working for a company so they can buy a $1,000 development kit, which is the case with the stuff that's available commercially for Z-Wave. And I was like, well, how am I supposed to learn this stuff without laying down a bunch of cash? And it is nice to have a bunch of cash, but not all of us have that, right? I don't have that. I'm paying off student loans from going to college. So, but these tools are freely available, and a lot of them, the Ubertooth one, I think it's $100 right now. Not too bad. So the Killer Bee framework needs this guy. It's a little TI Texas Instruments development board, which you can get for like $30.
And another thing is if you are students, you can usually get discounts, or you can get some of these devices free from providers because they're just interested in stimulating students learning about their tools so that they can bring it to the workforce. And also, you'll find certain devices that are only using HTTP and spawning Wi-Fi access points, which have a lower barrier to entry in terms of tools. Yeah, and some more tools. These are ones that are more, some of these are more hardware focused. So like you can use a logic analyzer, for example, if you're trying to pull, sniff the I2C bus or trying to pull data off the actual chip. So maybe you have a NAND chip with all the firmware on it and you want to pull that data off of it. Using a logic analyzer, you can decode the signals. JTAG is also really interesting. So these are actually testing points on the boards that you can look at, and they use them in the factory when they're trying to verify how well a tool works, or when the smart device is. And sometimes they have hidden features in them. In fact, the Xbox 360 exploit that allowed you to root it actually used a JTAG exploit, so for perspective. Then there's also software-defined radios. So for when you are working with a device that doesn't meet one of these protocol specifications, you can use something like an SDR to dynamically look at different frequencies and replay different types of packets. And this has been used in, for example, drones and replaying the movements being sent to them so you can cause them to spiral out of control. So that's been an interesting security problem. SDRs were used for that. So thinking out of the box, this was a recent assessment we did with a logic analyzer. And so our logic analyzer pins, we couldn't actually fit them under the chips because the chips are so small. So we actually used hypodermic needles, which are conductive, and we wedged those very carefully underneath the pins for the read, the read pins, so we were able to pull off the firmware. So that's a really cool, very recent example. That was a couple weeks ago.
Oh yeah, and that was one where we said, okay, we don't want to try to desolder this chip, and then find an adapter to to read the chip.
Right.
So we said, okay, we'll see if we can use it, if we can attack it with needles, and that sometimes it just takes some creativity. So. A lot of luck, actually.
Kind of right where the surface mounted, we kind of like got them to click a little bit underneath them, but kind of just, they're so sharp that we can kind of stick them right in there. I mean, that's the best description I can give.
Yep, it was basically like, once it was working, it was like, okay, nobody touch anything.
Yeah, this is like hands off.
While we try to pull the firmware off of it.
Yeah, we have like a little magnifying there and little clips to hold it there, very steady. Yeah, organization.
Okay, so this is a organization. Organization is a big thing. So once you've kind of identified what you're working with, right? You want to start tampering with data. You want to start understanding how these devices are talking, how they're talking to your phone, to a router, to the backend server, and you need to be organized. I hit this hard because I did my master's thesis on basically improving the security of smart homes, right? And so I looked at 6 different smart home hubs and just evaluated the security of all of them. And it took me like 2 months of just going to school every day to my little office and basically trying to understand what I was seeing, trying to capture packets and to modify things and see what I could break. And if I hadn't taken really great notes, it would have been a nightmare to try to write a whole thesis from that 2 months of work over the next 6 months, which is what I had to do. You want to go to the next page?
Yeah. So
this is actually some of my notes and some of the stuff I was able to generate. But I feel like, at least as a student, I didn't understand at the time the importance of organization. I thought I did, like I'd take a lot of notes and stuff, but I did not. So just one quick story from work. It was maybe 6 months ago. I was looking at a banking website for a client, and I was looking at creating a new user, and so I created this new user, modified a bunch of things, and lo and behold, I was able to create a super user basically. So I created the new user, logged in, and I had administrative rights. I could have shut down their system. And I was like, oh, this is great. Like, that's a finding. I can write that up. The client will want to know about this so they can fix it. And then I went to do it again, and I couldn't get it to work. But I had my proxy running, Burp Suite. I had that running, recording all the traffic. And I went and combed through that traffic to figure out exactly what I had done. Even though I had all the data, I knew the exact request that I had sent to create that new user. It took me 3 hours of combing through that data before I could recreate the same issue again. So if I hadn't been recording, if I hadn't had notes, had really good notes, there's no way I ever would have been able to recreate that, or at least it would have been very difficult. So
that's actually a great point. Like logging with your proxy while you're working on HTTP or HTTPS services is so important. In fact, Steve also likes to highlight. I know when you run certain attacks, you'll highlight a section in the UI, which is like a really cool trick that I really like. It definitely helps with organization. Yeah.
And then just it's really helpful to be familiar with typical issues that you're going to run across. One of the guides that I use is OWASP. A lot of you probably heard of OWASP. What I used I use it at work sometimes. I use it for my thesis. Was the OWASP Application Security Verification Standard, the OWASP ASVS. So if you're looking at advice and you say, hey, I don't know where to start on this, go download a copy of the ASVS, and it has checks that you can do. And it's organized into a bunch of different into different categories of vulnerability.
And just to piggyback off that, like the way I learned was actually very different. A lot of it was very self-taught. And for me, a lot of what I was learning from were proof of concepts. And so on HackerOne, when you're seeing all the proof of concepts that people put out, that's super helpful because you kind of then intuit this backwards. You kind of go approach it from the other direction. You're seeing all the types of vulnerabilities people are exploiting, and you're seeing that hands-on, and then you work your way back here. And I think going in either direction is a great thing.
True.
Sometimes this provides a lot more organization. So if you're looking, for example, at, I don't know, error handling and logging, finding a lot of those types of issues online and knowing what they look like and really getting a feel for them. Because that's such a huge thing a lot of times when you're looking at products, is knowing from an intuitive standpoint,
what to look for.
I feel like this is a problem. The amount of times we've said that back and forth to each other, it's like I feel like there's like
I haven't found anything yet.
I know it's there.
I don't know feel that there's a problem here.
Right. Yeah, and tailoring attacks is kind of what we were talking about earlier.
Oh yeah, yeah. So depending on the product, I guess creating a new user, creating an administrative user on like a smart light bulb, probably nobody cares about that, right? It's a consumer is probably gonna somebody's gonna be annoyed if you can turn their lights on and off, and maybe for a light bulb that's the best you can do. However, that light bulb, if it's using, let's say it's using Wi-Fi, you might be able to attack it and pull off the Wi-Fi password. And then suddenly, not only can you turn their lights on and off, you can also get on their wireless network and start attacking their laptop. And this, when I say you can start attacking, this is all from, remember this is from security consultant's point of view.
Yeah. So
we're doing this legally. with the permission of the companies that we're working with, but that's the things that you're looking for is if I can pull off the Wi-Fi password on a light bulb, then an attacker can do it. Somebody that's doing it maliciously can do it, and they can attack somebody's laptop and pull off last year's tax returns, pull off their sensitive data, and I want to be able to find that first, tell the company, so they can fix it, so that if I buy that smart light bulb, I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great thing, too, is just when you see things like HackerOne, like there's a whole filing against the internet, which is just people's bugs that found to fix the various things that affect a wide scope of the internet. And I love seeing those types of bugs. Because really, we're all just trying to make a safer world for all of us. and that's a really important thing to remember when you kind of think about security, because sometimes it can feel selfish because when you're working on it, you're really getting into it for your own self and the technology and the fun for that, but also really thinking about how you are making a difference in the bigger picture because you're really helping people. And that's one of the things that I definitely think is a big motivational factor, especially in the Internet of Things, because it can be so personal. So in the news.
So yeah, where does this all lead to? Like, what is it? Why should we care about all this, right? We started to talk about that on the last slide, but we see these kinds of issues in the real world, in the smart devices, in the Internet of Things, things that are out there. So this was last year. This might have been 2014, but somebody hacked into a Nest Cam and started talking to the babysitter.
Right. But at the same time, they're also helping catch burglaries on camera and stuff like that. And yeah, this was an interesting story.
That's the one. So somebody commandeered a baby monitor and started yelling obscenities at the baby.
I was just talking through it.
Right?
It was just kind of
like, that's not cool.
Yeah, smart TVs, just listening for product placement and stuff, always recording and streaming to servers. You never know what kind of stuff is getting transmitted by that. And also the notable, the ransomware on TVs is super interesting.
Oh yeah. Yeah, a lot with these smart devices, because the TV is running an operating system. Yeah. Somebody can write a virus. Somebody can write ransomware that'll run on that TV.
Right, an operating system connected to the internet, and then people can access into it. Yeah, and that's gonna be really scary because then it's like a product you own, you spent a lot of money for. Everything from a television to a pacemaker or something can be held for ransom for your life. My dad actually uses an insulin pump, and it totally freaks him out because he feels like someone could totally deliver like a lethal dose of insulin at any point if someone were to hack into it. So the implications can get, the stakes can get a lot higher.
Yeah. Anybody see this? Chrysler's recall?
Yeah, from last year.
So there were security vulnerabilities shown in some Chrysler automobiles.
1.4 million.
1.4 million cars recalled because of a security vulnerability, because Chrysler said, hey, we want to make our vehicles smarter, but they didn't spend the time to make them secure.
Do you want to grab that for a second?
There we go.
It just restarted. So yeah, and it's really interesting because we're seeing more and more these vehicle recalls are crazy expensive. It's not like a small little product that might cost $100 or something. I mean, these are cars. And Charlie Miller, who's a really cool researcher who he's known for his iOS jailbreaks, is now working on cars. And he's working with Uber's security division. Most recently, can you go one more slide, I think? Yeah, oh, yeah. That's Charlie Miller in the front seat. This is G-packing. And so they showed that in his previous year's report, he was showing how he could cause a car to brake on the highway. And then this year, he's showing how he can turn the steering wheel. So the stakes are getting higher, and the dangers of it are getting pretty severe. And yeah, it's national at this point.
We even see, the FBI has said, hey, watch out for these IoT devices. They may not be secure. Like, if the FBI is saying it, it's kind of a big deal. I would say partially because I don't know that the FBI goes and says that a lot, has big PR statements and says, hey, watch out for this. Yeah.
And this is the past DEF CON just a little bit ago. I mean, 47 new vulnerabilities and 23 IoT devices for perspective. And that's just in a couple, during the conference, which is a couple days, right? Yeah,
that's during the conference and just on talks that were accepted.
Yep. And and then now botnets with IoT devices. This is where it gets really interesting. So botnets are large groups of computers that can be used for attacking distributed denial of service attacks against servers. Over the summer, there's this 25,000 CCTV botnet that was causing attacks. And if you go to the next slide. And not only is it CCTVs, it can be all of your IoT devices at home. So now we're thinking like very large scale. I mean, nowadays, x86 processors and like quad-core processors are getting cheaper and cheaper, and like devices are getting more and more powerful computation power. So most recently, security journalist Brian Krebs got DDoSed. Akamai was backing him up. It was the biggest attack they've ever seen, shattering, it was 620 gigabit per second, and their previous record was like 300 and change. I mean, so the magnitude of these, and there was no amplification attacks, all these common tricks we see for amplifying the size of these attacks weren't present. as far as the evidence shows. So it looks like they literally have that many computers, and they're thinking that a lot of it's IoT-based. Right.
So let's step back a little bit, and we've got one example, the Brinks CompuSafe. Has anybody heard of this? Yeah, something new. So this was a safe that was looked at by two of our colleagues. So they hopped online and they found this Brinks safe, right? I'm sure a lot of you probably have heard of Brinks. Who's heard of Brinks? Yeah, you see their trucks driving around, and they got this smart safe on eBay just for research, and they said, hey, let's look and see if there's any issues with this. So you want to?
Yeah.
My phone. I need to kill this alarm.
So we have some footage for you.
There we go.
Traditional safes, like just about everything nowadays, have technologically evolved into computerized smart safes, which are currently being used by countless businesses across the country. A safe, by definition, is inherently safe. People trust them with their most valuable possessions, and businesses trust them with cash, large amounts of cash. You would think that smart safes are even more trustworthy and secure than the old-fashioned kind, right? But how smart are they really? For the most part, smart safes seem pretty secure. However, one particular model has a serious design flaw. The Brinks CompuSafe Galileo has a USB port on the safe's exterior. This enables a malicious user to automate an attack on the safe's computer and quickly opens its doors. All someone needs to do is plug a program thumb drive into that port, and voila. To learn more, visit our website at www.bishopfox.com.
Nice. So that's they made a nice little video, but it really was like a basic issue. The embedded computer in there was running Windows CE, really old version, and these smart safes were deployed at grocery stores, at small at college campuses, deployed all over, and anybody could walk up, plug in a USB drive, and basically pop open the safe and take money out of it. So yeah, like these issues that we're talking about, they're real, and there are real world consequences.
And that's another important thing about mapping attack surface. If you're looking at this big, bulky metal safe, what's the weakest attack point? You see a USB port, I mean, that's where you start. Yeah, defenses.
So yeah, so let's talk about, we've talked about all the problems that you might see, but how do we protect against them? Okay, so a lot of this it's very basic practices. So if you are looking to get IoT devices that you want to use in your own home, first I would suggest looking doing some basic searching and seeing if there are security vulnerabilities. But then beyond that, and we'll talk a little bit about that, buy devices that have update capabilities, right? So as you are looking at things, as other people are looking at these devices and find security vulnerabilities, they can report them to the company, and good companies will respond well and often fix those issues. And it depends on the company, but it's getting a lot better.
Yeah, just one thing off of that. Just because the company's been burned once isn't a reason to just consider them disreputable. It's really to see how they respond to those vulnerabilities, because it's going to happen inevitably to many companies. And I think that's how I kind of choose my products, is seeing companies that respond really well, they adopt a better security program, they start bringing in public bug bounties, rewarding researchers. Those types of steps are what you want to see in a company. Just because they have a vulnerability doesn't mean they're discredited.
Exactly.
Which is really important. Yeah.
So you want devices that can update. Ideally, they update automatically. If not, sign up for update notifications and push those updates to your devices. Second, you can place untrusted devices on a separate network. A lot of home routers have guest networks, or if you're doing this at work or at school, sometimes there is also a guest network, or just on a separate network. Stand up a testing network, so that if you don't know what this device is doing, if you don't know if it's phoning back to China, then you wait. Don't put it on the same network with your laptop, with things that are holding your sensitive data, because if that device gets compromised, suddenly they're on your network, and they can start to attack your computer and other devices.
Yeah, and as the last sentence says, except I'm standing in front of it, trust but verify, better yet, don't trust and verify. All right, thank you.
Nice. Awesome.